Are we going to give credit where it's due and acknowledge how awesome the in-season tournament has been? When it was first announced over the summer, I was insanely skeptical about the in-season tournament's ability to essentially make more of the regular season matter. Because here I was thinking like, well, why is anyone going to care about this random trophy that has no real meaning? Like the Larry O'Brien trophy, that's the trophy that signifies, hey, you are the last team standing, you are the best team in the NBA, you won the league this season. Whereas this in-season tournament trophy was just for like this small, section of the regular season. It's single game elimination. It just didn't have the same oomph as the Larry O'Brien trophy. And obviously being in the first year of the in-season tournament, it doesn't have the history that the Larry O'Brien trophy does. And so I'm thinking like, why are players going to care about that? Why are fans going to care about that? Oh, players win $500,000 if they win the tournament. Well, why are players who are making millions and millions of dollars, more than they ever have before, why are they going to care about $500,000? Why, as a fan, am I going to care if a player gets $500,000 more when they're already making millions? It all just seemed very arbitrary. And so I thought to myself, well, if the players start to care, then maybe I'll care. Because at the end of the day, if the players, treat this with the seriousness it deserves, that trickles down and it affects everyone, right? Same thing with the All-Star game. NBA can make as many changes as they want as far as like the drafting, East versus West, whatever, Elam ending. But like at the end of the day, if the players don't take it seriously, then there's a trickle-down effect and nobody else will. So part of me thought, well, if the players take the in-season tournament seriously, then I will. But then I was thinking like, I don't know, I still just don't know if I could care about this thing that just doesn't have any meaning, that's not rooted in history the same way, the Larry O'Brien trophy is. I was intrigued to see it play out, but you ultimately don't know. And the funny thing is that, independent of how the games have gone, I really just like having the in-season tournament around. I think it's really nice. If nothing else, like to say nothing about how the games have gone and how it's been treated by the players, it's a nice change of pace. It's a nice, something that's different. At a time during the NBA season where it's always typically felt that teams are just sort of ramping up. The joke is always like, hey, NBA doesn't really start till Christmas because that's when teams really get into a rhythm. The first 20 games, it's a lot of getting your reps in and getting conditioning up, feeling yourself out. That's more of the ramp up period, which, doesn't always produce the best basketball. Now here's this thing that just adds something different. Again, that's literally all it is for me, if nothing else. It's something different. It's something that adds a little bit of juice, a little bit of spice to this typically sort of start of the season. And that's kind of nice for me. Again, I have very low standards for my attention span, so all you need to do is just throw something different at me. I'm like a child. And that's intriguing. So to see there's this tournament that technically counts for something, and to see the new courts every Tuesday and Friday, it just adds something different that's very refreshing and just adds a little just something else that's been very nice. But then what's been really impressive about the in-season tournament, and I gotta give credit where it's due, is that the players are taking it seriously. You hear a lot of them talk about how much they want to win it, because if nothing else, they're competitors, and competitors always want to win. It doesn't matter if it's the NBA championship or a game of checkers. These guys compete their whole lives. Of course, they want the bragging rights of winning this trophy. But then you also hear about, even Damian Lillard, who's made hundreds of millions of dollars, definitely doesn't need the $500K. He's talked about how he wants to win it, not necessarily for himself, but the guys at the end of the bench, where $500,000 would be insane, life-changing money for them. So you combine the competitive juices these guys have and how it's being input into the games. You combine their desire to win the $500K, whether it's for themselves, because some players actually have just said hey, $500,000 is a lot, doesn't matter how much you make, which is true, or their desire to win it for teammates, and it's created this really great level of basketball where every Tuesday and Friday for the last few weeks, it's been great. There's been a lot of really entertaining basketball, a lot of basketball that feels like it has higher stakes, that players seem to care more about, and it's done exactly what it's supposed to do. At a time when the NBA has felt sort of lackluster, where many casual fans might not be paying attention, they might be more into football, now they have a reason to watch, now they have a reason to care. It really cures this dull period in the NBA, and it's an insane testament to Adam Silver's genius for coming up with this idea, or at least having the guts to implement it, because obviously a lot of people criticized him for it, but it's worked about as well as you could hope for. This past Tuesday, which was the last day of the seeding games, to have these games not just matter from a win-loss perspective, also from a point differential perspective, was great. I was watching the Knicks Hornets. Knicks were up 20, and I was still really nervous because I knew that they had to win by X amount of points to have a better chance of getting into the knockout stage. So not only are you making the games from the jump more competitive and more interesting. You're making blowout games more interesting. It is insanely impressive. Adam Silver deserves so much credit. The entire NBA deserves so much credit because they got a lot of criticism, especially from me. You know, I was of the belief that, like, hey, why can't players just try more during the regular season? Like, why is that not enough? Why do we keep having to introduce these new sort of gimmicks, new tricks, all this stuff to get players to try harder during the regular season? Why can't they just do that on their own? I was wrong, and I'm happy to say that because it's creating more great basketball. And for it to not just work, but to work in the first year, where I think a lot of people thought it might take a few seasons for the NBA to like figure out the tweaks or maybe the right incentive to get players to really care. The fact that it's this good in the first year of its existence in the NBA is so beyond impressive. And I also want to give credit to the players because at the end of the day, if they don't care, then it doesn't matter. Like, you could give whatever incentive you want, Vegas, you could take them to the moon, 500,000, a million, whatever. Like, at the end of the day, if the players don't care, it's not going to work. And they do, and you can see it in the product. It's great when those courts come out. The players seem to play with added intensity. It's great, and it's fixed one of the NBA's biggest problems, which is this time in between when the season starts and when Christmas comes, or at least when football ends. Like, nobody really wants to watch the NBA. Now you have this added incentive. Oh, now this new thing that teams are competing for. And the beauty is that it's only going to get better. I think, you know, they're going to tweak it more and more. I think one of the things that would be really good is if, you know, especially on the last day of the tournament games, sort of explain the point differential stuff a bit more. That was definitely really confusing, especially when you're trying to follow it in real time as multiple games are going on at the same time. There's definitely something to be said about maybe increasing the incentive to win the in-season tournament, maybe like a guaranteed playoff spot or at least a play-in spot. But again, that's all nitpicky stuff. At the end of the day, the in-season tournament has been a success because it's done at a very baseline level exactly what it's needed to. It's resulted in better basketball, more interesting basketball. It's given fans a reason to care at times when they typically wouldn't. That's all Adam Silver could have hoped for. So I'm insanely happy as a massive NBA fan that I have more stuff to care about, stuff that makes the game more interesting. And I'm excited to see how the hype continues to grow around the in-season tournament, how it continues to evolve and get better and just continue to contribute to the overall product of the NBA.